Hello everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this video. I am going to be tackling the up-and-coming solar eclipse in Virgo. Highly awaited. Obviously, we are in the midst of eclipse season, and this is going to be part 2 of the fall eclipses 2025. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, subscribe to the channel, click the like button below if you like this video, and consider leaving me a comment down below and let me know what you guys are kind of moving through with this up and coming eclipse. Now, this is going to be taking place on the 21st of September, 2025. So if you guys are watching this in early September, since the last eclipse that we had, we are still building into this particular cycle. But truth be told, some of you guys are already feeling some of the effects of this, so you don't have to wait until the 21st to see some of these new beginnings emerge. And we're going to be diving into the topics of solar eclipse in Virgo today. We're going to be talking about what it means. And if you guys stay tuned to the end of the video, I'll be taking you through the 12 rising signs and giving you guys my predictions on this eclipse. You can also find more information about this in my August and September horoscopes, as well as my webinar that I put out for the fall 2025 eclipses. So I definitely recommend checking that out. It's super helpful and gives you insight into both of the eclipses with predictions for the 12 rising signs and world predictions, and it's over 3 hours long. Click the links below if you guys want to head over to my website to pick that up. All right, so September 21st, depending on your time zone, I'm central here in Texas, so it's going to be hitting around 2:54 p.m., so that's going to be around 12:54 p.m. on the Pacific coast and 3:54 p.m. on the Eastern coast. You may have to adjust your time zone to see kind of where this is taking place for you. But obviously at 29 degrees of Virgo, this is a very potent solar eclipse. And it's also the second new moon in Virgo that we have seen during Virgo season. So you might want to be reflecting back to the last new moon that we had that took place at 0 degrees this last month. Now, obviously, we know that eclipse season is a kind of portal of change. We're still coming off of the lunar eclipse that we had on the 7th, where there was major conclusions and completions. And now, under the solar eclipse in Virgo, we figure out what we're going to do about it. So it will be visible in some parts of the world, particularly kind of closer to Australia, New Zealand, and obviously Antarctica. So not many of us are going to be able to kind of view that. But it is going to have major astrological, I think, influences across the globe. Now, when we talk about solar eclipses and what they represent, this is essentially a new moon that's on steroids. So the solar eclipse is like a supercharged new moon, and it's symbolizing new beginnings, fresh starts, as well as planting new seeds for future growth. So it is representing, in a way, like a reset that we're seeing in a particular area of our lives that's governed by the sign of Virgo. So pull out your chart, take a look at where Virgo is in your horoscope. That's where you're going to be having the opportunity to set new intentions in this particular area and obviously embark on new paths. However, because this eclipse is a part of South Node eclipses with the South Node in Virgo, it's also carrying themes of releasing and letting go of old patterns to make room for something that's new. Now, like I said, we had a recent lunar eclipse on the 7th of September. This was in Pisces, the opposite sign. So over the next 2 weeks, we are building towards the solar eclipse on the 21st. And obviously, you know, we had a lot of emotional kind of completions and closures and releases that was taking place since the 7th of this month. That Pisces lunar eclipse was all about surrendering to illusions and also healing emotional wounds and embracing more of the compassionate kind of nature of Pisces. Now with the Virgo solar eclipse that's taking place, we're taking some of those lessons and applying them practically, right? And organizing our lives, refining our routines, as well as creating structured new beginnings from the chaos that we have been recently letting go of. As for who this is going to be impacting the most, believe it or not, it's going to be impacting a lot more than just Virgo placements. So if you happen to have anything between 27 and 29 degrees of Virgo, if you have a planet, a sun, moon, or rising there, this eclipse is very personal for you as it's going to be conjunct that particular placement in your chart. However, it is at 29 degrees. So it's also going to be impacting 0 to 2 degrees of the cardinal signs. So if you happen to have Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn around these early degrees, you'll be feeling the effects of this as well. And because this is taking place in a mutable sign, the late degree mutables are feeling this also. So if you happen to have anything around 28 or 29 degrees, of Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, you're going to be impacted by this as well. Solar eclipses strongly impact people who also have a Leo or a Leo, like a Leo sun or a Leo rising. So you want to take that into consideration also. So there's a number of people who are kind of getting impacted by this particular eclipse. And I think there are so many interesting things to kind of look at with this eclipse, probably starting with the fact that it's at 29 degrees. So this is known in astrology as the anaretic degree. When we see an anaretic degree coming up, either in a natal chart or in a lunation or an eclipse, it does signify that this is a degree that deals with fate. And anaretic degrees carry this sense of urgency and crisis and the need to complete something. So since we look back at the most recent new moon that we had in Virgo at 0 degrees, many of us knew where we needed to kind of set new intentions or focus more on our health or our routine. If we have failed to do so over the last month, now we're going to be feeling like we're kicking things into overdrive. It's almost like the universe is really pushing us to wrap up unfinished business in Virgo themes before moving forward. Now, this degree is going to amplify the need to finalize matters as well over the better part of the next 6 months. And often this degree brings like a degree of pressure and kind of feeling like some things are inevitable to happen, making it the end of a cycle and the brink of a transition as we move out of Virgo energy and we move into Libra. Now, the themes of the degree theory is interesting as well because 29 degrees does have this connection and correlation to intuition, psychic abilities, anything that's like kind of seeing kind of past the veil. But it also has a strong connection and association with Leo because 29 degrees deals with Leo in degree astrology. It is connected to kings, queens, leaderships, anything revolving around also like Hollywood, celebrities, and obviously drama. So I think really what we're looking at is infusing that particular degree theory with Virgo-like qualities. So analysis, perfectionism, service, and attention to detail. At 29 degrees, there's also this kind of karmic flavor of mastering or the lessons learned through hardship that kind of come through here. And it often involves themes of sacrifice, healing, and any kind of meticulous work. Now, it can signify endings that feel fated, pushing us towards evolution by forcing us to address overlooked details or unresolved issues. In particular, we're going to be taking a look at the 30 degrees for the Sabian symbol for Virgo because we round up. So it's going to be about 29 degrees in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to read to you guys the 30 degrees of Virgo and see what the Sabian symbol says. All right, so let's look at that. Here we go. So Virgo 30, a false call unheard and attention to his immediate service. The keyword is safeguard. The theme is call to higher duty. The symbol speaks to the responsibility and the fact that when an individual focuses on things of higher value and minds his own business, he will seldom waste his time and energy on foolish distractions or lose his place in the immortal scheme of things. The image of a false or unheard call and attention to immediate action of service dramatizes the principle of discrimination and the ability to choose wisely. It also alludes to the fact that when an individual has found his true calling and knows where his duty lies and what he needs to do to get where he wants to go, life and circumstances cooperate with the individual who creates a place for himself in the world. At its highest, the symbol represents integrity and self-fulfillment through accomplishing a special mission in life. Watch for inability to separate the wheat from the chaff, and indecision, and a complete lack of discretion. Today, the accent is on concentration and focus. Your time and attention is likely to be taken up trying to find solutions to pressing problems. Your greatest advantage lies in prioritizing and putting things first. Make a list and stick to it. Guard against letting yourself get distracted or caught up in other people's problems. Don't put off until tomorrow what needs to be done today. Stepping stones are focus, concentration, discrimination, interest, dedication, devotion, commitment, stewardship, mission, responsibility, duty, and protection. So when we apply that, kind of 30-degree symbol to what's going on with the eclipse, I think it's really emphasizing like this unwavering focus and discipline that we really need to be kind of initiating around the time of the solar eclipse. Now, it can mean that we have to really focus on blocking any distractions to finish what it is that we have to get done. And it also really applies to this eclipse by urging us to concentrate on practical matters and ignoring any temptations or diversions that can be coming up. This is also about really committing to completing cycles in our lives with precision as well as dedication. So I see it as like a call to really prioritize essential tasks that are really necessary to see progress over the better part of like the next 6 to 12 months. Now, in general, when we see a solar eclipse in Virgo, and this is actually the first one that we're seeing since the nodes changed signs at the beginning of 2025, Virgo energy is all about practicality. It's also connected to health and service, organization, as well as self-improvement. So this solar eclipse really highlights themes of refining our daily routines, improving our wellness, both physical as well as mental, and discerning what's useful versus what's wasteful, and also offering help to other people. It's really encouraging us to practice, humility and hard work and attention to the small details that can actually lead to some rather big changes down the road. With the South Node influence, we may need to release perfectionist tendencies and overcriticism or unhealthy habits to embrace healthier and more balanced structures. For some of us, it also might materialize as making big changes with our schedules, checking in with our healthcare providers, and kind of navigating our health in a much more mind, body, spirit way, finding balance, maybe even changing jobs or rearranging, our office kind of furniture, cleaning out our desk drawer. That kind of stuff can be happening under a Virgo eclipse as well. As for global themes and predictions for this particular eclipse, some of these things are going to be happening prior to the eclipse taking place because we're already within that 2-week eclipse window. Some of these things can be really unfolding over the latter, part of the year as we're kind of coming to the midway point between the eclipses, which will be happening closer to the winter solstice. But when I think about this solar eclipse, I think about healthcare, because Virgo is very much about healthcare, whether it's doctors, nurses, service members, anything kind of connecting to, the service industry. And in particular, this is saying, okay, we're going to see something that's becoming illuminated regarding some of these themes out in the world. So what comes up for me is healthcare and pandemic reforms amid what can feel like a lot of institutional restrictions. A lot of this I contribute to the opposition to Saturn, which I'll talk about in a second. But because Virgo rules public health and medical services, and that opposition to Saturn and Pisces, we're going to be seeing that it's highlighting barriers in compassionate institutions. So things like hospitals and global aid organizations are going to be in the news. I do expect that this will intensify focus on the healthcare system, in particular overhauls, such as policy changes that will be addressing insufficiencies or shortages. But also we can see delays due to bureaucratic red tape, or funding cuts that can be taking place as a result of government decisions. Now, potential events are hard to predict with eclipses, but it is possible that this can bring about renewed debates over disease control programs, pharmaceutical regulations, as well as elder care. And we could also see this will be possibly triggering public health alerts or reforms to, in response to emerging variants or environmental health threats, particularly connected to our food as well as farming, and anything that's associated with pharmaceuticals, as well as water health and water treatment facilities. Now, I think this could manifest as global tensions in foreign aid distribution. That's likely going to be a huge theme over the next 6 months, where practical Virgo energy is clashing with Pisces kind of escapist or idealistic approaches, and this will be leading to accountability demands in organizations across the globe. Now, we will probably see some economic volatility, in particular connections to major shifts happening in the labor market. So job numbers, job reports, obviously if you guys are hearing some of the stuff that's coming out in the news, it's slowly but surely starting to kind of come to the surface that we're hearing there's actually more people that are seeking employment than what is actually available in the job market. So that's huge connection to the solar eclipse. I do think because of the emphasis with Virgo in work and routines, some of the oppositions that we're going to see to Saturn is going to show the limiting influences with Saturn and Pisces. So this will symbolize constraints on collective economic dreams or welfare systems. We're also going to see financial markets that will most likely be experiencing heightened instability with fluctuations in commodities, food supplies, or service sectors. I do predict that the labor market will see a bit of unrest over the next 6 months. We will likely see more strikes or reforms in workers' rights coming up, especially when it comes to agriculture or civil service, as old patterns of overwork or inequality are beginning to be released under this eclipse. Now, globally, this might amplify economic polarization because we do see an opposition to Saturn with perfectionist policies. So tariffs are definitely going to come up, or disruptions in supply chains, echoing kind of broader transitions towards sustainable, more detail-oriented economic models and institutional collapses. For government and institutional collapse and power struggles, this is also a major headline. I do think Saturn in Pisces, opposing the sun and the moon at the time of the eclipse is really underscoring some of the karmic reckonings that are coming up in governance, but also things like prisons and sacred institutions, private hospitals. And in Virgo, it's really demanding more precise service-oriented leadership. So these themes are going to include bureaucratic obstruction and kind of highlighting where there's been abuses of power, potentially leading to scandals or breakdowns in centralized systems. Now, world events could possibly include political disappointments, such as faltering leadership. I would expect that. We can also see vetoes in international bodies like the UN and politicization of visas and also immigration. We could see some security lapses, especially regarding borders. And this opposition is likely going to be fueling a closed door, closed open kind of dynamic. So we're going to see that, things are going to shut down, certain things are going to be opening up. There's going to be kind of tightening of regulations under certain systems as well as immigration. And I do think that this is going to be showing us where there's outdated, regimes that are kind of, coming to the surface. And it's really initiating some of these new paradigms in diplomacy or environmental policies. Likely there will be some resistance, that will be coming up. We're going to have to cut through some of the illusion and also some of the propaganda that's tied to some of these topics. It is possible, because Virgo is an earth sign and it's connected to Mercury, that we're going to see lots of themes connected to environmental and resource management, and 29 degrees deals with crisis. So I do think that Virgo's kind of connection to agriculture and ecology is really clashing with Pisces' kind of, fluid themes under the Saturn restrictions. So I'm thinking water-related issues like floods, pollution, or resource scarcity is going to be a theme. It's not limited to water. It can also be other bodies of water, not just the ocean, lakes, drinking water, treatment facilities. And also it does touch a little bit on like oil and gas. So we might see those themes come up. And the solar eclipse is likely going to highlight urgent reforms and more sustainable practices. So we're going to learn more about soil health and also food security. But because it's opposing Saturn, we're going to see institutional kind of like inertia or climate denial that's coming up. Potential global events and amplified natural disasters are possible under this solar eclipse. We're also going to see policy shifts in environmental agreements or breakthroughs in green technology. This is likely going to be driven by the eclipse's trines to Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius, bringing about innovations and new collective solutions. I do think that this period might mark a threshold between old environmental neglect and, how things have been structured, and taking like a new approach where we're going to be a little bit more disciplined when it comes to healing any of the planetary wounds. Now, obviously, that opposition is pretty gnarly. I do think that we can see a lot of polarization, unfortunately, over the next 6 months. And there can also be social separation and cultural realignment that can be taking place. So because it's amplifying through the opposition tension between Virgo's more kind of analytical service-based energy and Pisces' more kind of lack of boundaries and focusing on compassion and unity, this is going to be, I think, really exacerbating some of the identity politics, showing us more media polarization and online unrest. Now, these themes are going to be about really, rebellion against the norms. We'll see, Venus square Uranus at the time of the eclipse. So I think that's also where there's some relational disturbances. I do think that we can also see some major shifts in social values. And globally, this could really involve reevaluations of spiritual or cultural institutions, really urging the release of escapist tendencies in favor of practical community building. Now, I do expect that there can be flashpoints that can come up around the time of the eclipse regarding human rights, migration policies, or technological ethics, as the eclipse is really pushing for a more authentic kind of sense of freedom amid some of the collective disillusionment with oppositions to Saturn and Neptune. Now, I do think there can be some positive things from this eclipse. I'm anticipating some technological and collective healing breakthroughs. Obviously, we have to kind of cut through some of the fog and some of the muck to get there. So it will be a process as we're building into the spring of 2026 when this solar eclipse becomes a lunar eclipse in Virgo next year. But with the supportive aspects that we see, where Mercury in Libra will be trining Uranus in Gemini, as well as Pluto in Aquarius, The eclipse is really fostering, I think, orchestrated shifts in technology, as well as social networks and humanitarian efforts. This will be tempered by Saturn's opposition for discipline and implementation, but Virgo's detail-oriented energy may drive advancements when it comes to AI for health or labor efficiency, while Pisces themes address collective trauma or spiritual discernment. I do predict that we're going to see rapid innovations in global communication or healing initiatives, but with some of the challenges of integrating lessons from past failure, especially when it comes to leadership over health and governance. Potentially, this will lead to reforms in education, media, and international collaborations over the next 6 to 12 months. But overall, eclipses are, obviously big portals for change, and I see this particular eclipse as like a forget-me-not reminder of any unresolved global issues or personal issues that we have to kind of deal with. And it's really bridging, I think, old illusions with new practical realities. A lot of people are going to be shocked and surprised about a lot of the disclosure that's going to be coming, not only around the eclipse, but I think the better part of the first 6 months of 2026 is when we're really going to see this unfold. And while it's challenging, it offers opportunities for mature, service-driven progress if institutions embrace more of Virgo's precision over Pisces' evasions. Now, these themes are obviously speculative, based off of the astrological patterns. And in your own life, you're going to have to take into consideration the aspects that are going on in your chart to really get a better idea of how this is going to be impacting you. But I will tell you, because Saturn is retrograde, and we're still dealing with Saturn and Neptune going in and out of Pisces, likely we won't see the full effects of this until both of those planets move into Aries in February of next year. As for how long this eclipse will be lasting, obviously eclipses can, last for a mere couple of, minutes to several hours, but it will have an impact that will kind of go all the way down the line. And so what I think about personally is the eclipses that are going to be, taking place now, and how we are going to continue to see eclipses in Virgo and Pisces clear into next year. So it's safe to say this will be impacting us for about a year's time. And in particular, this is really building towards the momentum when we have a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo in 2026. I think it's going to be in March. We'll take a look at it. And this is where some of the themes or the seeds that are being planted during this particular time start to kind of culminate or resolve. So expect gradual manifestations, I think, with peak intensity somewhere around the latter part of December of 2025. And then again, we're going to see this in the spring of 2026. So what you guys are looking at right now is the solar eclipse chart, and I'm going to break that down. But first, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how this is going to become a lunar eclipse down the road. So we're looking at September 21st, 2025, and then next year, this is going to become a lunar eclipse at 12 degrees Virgo on March the 3rd, 2026. Now, you guys will hear me talk about that as we get closer to February. And also make sure you're subscribed at the beginning of the year, usually around New Year's Day. I always do a full overview of all of the major astrological events for the year ahead. So you don't want to miss that. You'll be able to get all that information before I even put out my eclipse webinars. But what I think about when I look at this particular lunar eclipse is this is very, very close to the south node. Okay, so it's going to be right on the south node. It's at a 12, which is a Pisces degree, which is going to be about dissolving something regarding health and services. And it can also be connected to pharma. It can be connecting to food, drug, alcohol. It can also be kind of connected to mental health initiatives, and also potentially kind of moving away from this kind of global governance when it comes to health. Now, when this eclipse happens, Mercury is going to be the ruler, and obviously it's a bit debilitated in Pisces because it's moving through a much more kind of intuitive, obviously water, mutable sign. So it is confusing, and it will be right in between Venus and right in between the sun. And what we'll be watching for is shortly after this eclipse, the cazimi that's going to be happening in Pisces. So a lot of the wrapping up effects of this eclipse is not really going to be taking place until like March, April of next year. So we've got nothing but time to work towards this. More on this later as we get to the beginning of 2026. But I think all in all, in terms of why, this is just so critical, it's both a combination, I think, of the energetic degree as well as the opposition to Saturn. And because it is a south node eclipse, it's really signaling a really pivotal turning point, and almost like there's like a cosmic deadline that's being initiated right now, okay, that we have to release outdated kind of Virgo patterns making space for something that's healthier, that's more productive, that's going to be better for us in the long term. And it's obviously, occurring right before we move into the autumn equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere. A mere day later, the sun enters into Libra, and we're going to be initiating this brand new kind of beginning for the better part of the next season. So it's really setting things off when it comes to the season ahead, really emphasizing the need for practical adjustments that need to be made amid some of the broader kind of collective shifts that are taking place. Now, with that connection to the South Node, it's pretty far away, right? It's not close. It's about 11 degrees or so away, but it's still a South Node eclipse. So when we think about the South Node, and you guys you probably heard me talk about this in my Sunday video on my astro weather, all these planets that are conjunct the South Node. So this week, if you're watching, the week of like the 9th, 10th, 11th, the sun's going to conjunct the South Node, Mercury's going to conjunct the South Node, we're going to see a cazimi. And this is an important period, that the week leading up to the eclipse is very significant with those South Node connections, because it represents what? We're dealing with the past, we're clearing out the past, we're reassessing the past, we're releasing information. Certainly Mercury can be about news, the sun can be about health and leaders. And all of this stuff is coming up prior to the solar eclipse. And the South Node in astrology represents past karma, okay? So this is about what we're releasing, whether it's past lives or things that we have done in this lifetime, and collectively what we're really moving away from. So I think in Virgo, it's really urging us to let go of excessive worry, maybe nitpicking, or, service that really drains us without feeling like there is a fair exchange. And this tie-in to the South Node really amplifies the themes of this particular eclipse, and it's really connected to purging and allowing new energy in. Now, contrasting with the North Node that's in Pisces, which we just recently had with that eclipse, it's really, I think, going to be about going, okay, in order to move forward, we have to deal with the past. We have to kind of come to terms with what didn't work, what wasn't productive, what wasn't helpful. And it's definitely going to, I think, usher in 6 to 12 months of just real focus on where there has been lack of leadership, or where there has been lack of transparency, or, guidelines, or, boundaries. Certainly Saturn in Pisces has kind of taught us that if we don't have boundaries, especially with Neptune, we can kind of lose ourselves with this kind of global kind of connected, programming, I think, that's been going on. Anyway, Pisces themes include everything from what's going on with the global collective, what's happening with sleep, what's going on with mental health, with prisons, and anything kind of connecting also to like immigration. So that's why immigration has been such a theme. And Pisces can be where we're feeling like flooded. So we can be feeling flooded with storms, with emotions, and also subconsciously there's a lot kind of going on in the ethers, particularly during eclipses. So, it's going to be different for each individual chart. But what I will tell you is that I have concerns, and I'm sure there's other astrologers out there, whether or not they've said it or not, that also have similar concerns about whether or not there's going to be some changes in direction with healthcare. Okay, so healthcare or preventative measures when it comes to healthcare. And also, I think this is going to be really showing us that we're at a tipping point where it's like, okay, after what we've gone through over the last 5 years, how can we not repeat some of the same, lessons? Saturn can be about restriction and limitation. So whether that's where we told people, to not travel some places, or we told people to, trust science, or to, participate in certain, medical treatments, and all of that's kind of coming back up. And now we're asking whether or not, governments are going to take accountability for now what's going on with health systems. So it's not just about the health of citizens. It could also be how we got here, with so many people on welfare, why we have so many people that are entering into the prison system. And like, why is that happening? Is there some kind of alignment to make profit as a result of certain communities having, higher rates of people that are committing crimes and being incarcerated? And is it certain cultures? Is it certain backgrounds, certain demographics, I guess I should say? And kind of peeling back, the veil on that and seeing why that's happening, and if there is an incentive to create more of those problems in certain cities. And is it due to lack of boundaries? Is it due to lack of governing? And also, what are we not seeing that's kind of going on behind the curtain? Now, this particular solar eclipse obviously features, I think, probably one of the strongest aspects will be that opposition to Saturn. And, every new or full moon we look at the aspects. As an astrologer, it's my job to go, okay, how is the ruler behaving? What's going on with the sun? What's going on with the moon? And then give you guys this kind of general forecast. So certainly the Saturn opposition for me is very glaring because it's kind of representing where we've been seeing problems with the Virgo Pisces axis really since the better part of fall of last year. Now, that solar eclipse in opposition to Saturn basically means that it's bringing up tension between Virgo's more practical nature, health-oriented nature, and Pisces' more kind of dreamy lack of boundaries, right? Saturn is retrograde. And it's at a 28, so it is going to deal with what's going on emotionally, what's going on also when it comes to families, when it comes to home and property, because it is a Cancer degree, and the moon does connect and correlate with Cancer as well. So I do think we're going to hear more about what's going on with this like glooming, housing crisis, whether or not they're trying to incentivize people if they're lowering rates to kind of, pump more money into the system to try to, get people to be willing to buy homes. And likely, I think the opposition to Saturn is even though they're trying to do that, there is going to be some institutional resistance that's going to be going on to keep that from happening. But certainly, the opposition is really about really saying, hey, we need accountability, right? Like we need accountability. It is going to be highlighting some of our personal and kind of, I think, global limitations emotionally and also in spiritual areas, right, Pisces? And really, it's about facing responsibilities head on and setting realistic boundaries and learning from past restrictions to have better leadership moving forward and also to have better kind of like maturity and growth. I do think that it is possible with the solar eclipse that we can see things breaking down, things dissolving, right? Pretty common when you have Saturn retrograde. Like we'll see issues with bridges, we'll see problems with levees and dams, and we can see issues with the ocean coming up. But Saturn and Neptune is representing like this dissolving of foundations, okay? So it's opposing Saturn almost exactly. It's a little bit less than a degree in opposition, and it's about to oppose Neptune. So you're going to see like the day of the eclipse and the day after, it's not just the Sun-Saturn opposition where something is breaking down and we're like, shoot, we got to fix this, or we got to, take it into the shop, or we got to fix this problem and we got to do it now, right? 29 degrees. But Neptune is also going to be about, what we have not known. So we're going to be finding out that there's things that have been going on and like suddenly we have to make some pretty dramatic health changes, some changes also regarding our jobs, our habits, and anything kind of connected to the Virgo realm. You're going to hear a lot more about information coming out regarding drugs and the effects that drugs have. And there's no coincidence that in September, we're going to be hearing a lot more from the CDC and I think a lot more from like the FDA regarding truth and things that have been hidden or documents or findings and studies that have been conveniently kind of like, I think, hidden or potentially even destroyed to avoid any, reckoning or, kind of responsibility in the aftermath of some of like the damning, results and findings. And so I do think that will happen. It might take time to fully understand all of it, but that's going to be building into next year. And with the solar eclipse, in opposition to Saturn, it's going to be kind of saying where, we need new systems, but there is this sense of being like, can we actually build it? Do we have the capability of doing it? And do we actually need to start over? I kind of see Saturn and Neptune at the late degrees of needing to dissolve certain things because how we have done things in the past has not actually worked. As we know in 2026, we're really being pushed forward with Saturn and Neptune going into Aries to initiate something new. So it can be new ways of leading. It can be new military programs. It could also be about individuals being a little bit more independent and believing in themselves and no longer feeling like they're victimized or they're overwhelmed or they're scared, and learning to have this newfound sense of personal belief and I think confidence within themselves. That Saturn and Neptune conjunction is very rare. We see that about every 36 years. So it's kind of hovering in 2025 as like a precursor for the bigger changes that will come next spring. But with the moon in opposition to Saturn, emotional blockages, difficulties with home, family, and housing. With the sun coming into opposition with Neptune, it's also very confusing, and it does represent with Neptune retrograde things that we did not know about our body, about what we're consuming, what we're drinking. I think alcohol, drugs, all of that stuff, we're going to start to see some major changes in terms of major revelations of the impacts on some of this stuff, not only on us energetically and spiritually, but Virgo is practical. So it's like, how is it affecting, your digestion? How is it affecting your productivity? How is this potentially not necessarily helping things? It's just kind of treating the symptoms. And with the sun and the moon solar eclipse in Virgo opposing Neptune retrograde, we're going to see that there's going to be a lot of confusion or idealism that's going to be coming up that's clashing with reality. So the positive is that it can dissolve illusions, and that's really what we want to focus on. And it's really forcing us to kind of confront deceptions or escapist tendencies. So this means that really, grounding out during the eclipse is important. Like we need to be doing more Virgo things. We need to be having, organized, kind of lists and tasks. And we need to be making sure that we're eating well, taking care of our bodies, and maybe navigating doing that in a much more intuitive way with the opposition to Neptune. But it can also mean that likely we're going to see, if we're trying to take practical actions, there can still be boundary issues that can come up. There can still be lack of motivation or lack of clarity. We can also see, I think, a lot of people after this eclipse decide, that's it. I am finally going back to the gym. I'm not drinking anymore, especially with the Saturn-Neptune opposition. I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to start focusing more on having a spiritual practice or having like a religious practice that I kind of partake in, which I think can be the positive side of this particular eclipse. Now, Mercury is the ruler, and Mercury is going to be not exactly conjunct, but within range of the solar eclipse, and it's going to be in Libra, which is really kind of putting an emphasis on anything connecting to working together, diplomacy, having support from other people, the conversations we have with our partners, the conversations we have with our clients, anything that's connected and associated with travel and information and news and legal matters can also be a theme here with Mercury in Libra. But I do think with that being so close to, almost like in conjunction to the eclipse, it does seem to kind of indicate that this is really about emphasizing balanced communication and, trying to find the best people or the best support or working together with other people to move through some of these challenges. So this might mean that there's like new ideas or conversations and partnerships that are really coming up as a result of the eclipse. And it's promoting fair negotiations and harmonious decisions, reaching out for help. So it could be like you're getting a therapist, you're getting an astrologer, you're working with a coach, you're working with a dietitian. Maybe you're talking to your partner about being like, hey, let's make, a decision to have healthier habits. Let's watch less TV. Let's work out more. Let's do other things. Let's read. Focusing on how we can actually build unity rather than kind of seeing the polarization and the separation from the Saturn-Neptune opposition. Now, Mercury is also making a ton of aspects. So it is going to be coming into both a trine with Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, as well as a trine to Uranus retrograde in Gemini. So we're going to see a grand air trine between these planets, which I feel like this is like the silver lining. Okay, so if you don't want to get stuck in the opposition to Saturn and Neptune, you want to work with the trine. So you want to be looking at the Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini area of your chart to kind of see, okay, where is new information coming in? Where are things changing? And this really is about bringing major transformations, and like things come with ease when we see trines. Now, obviously Uranus is unpredictable, especially with communication, travel, and learning in Gemini. Pluto is also very powerful, and it's about, kind of definitive changes and kind of purging and working through collective kind of traumas or dramas. But I really feel like with Mercury trine Pluto, it's empowering deep changes in innovation and community. And with Mercury trine Uranus and Gemini, this is about sparking sudden insights and freedom. So opportunities for breakthroughs in thinking, technology, social connections is really facilitating, I think, profound, unexpected, positive results. And I think that's the one thing that I'm really excited to see. And as you guys can see, because this is almost 0 degrees of Libra, that means that the sun is trining Pluto, powerful transformation when it comes to leadership, when it comes to ego, when it comes to health and systems for all. Moon trine Pluto, right? Emotional kind of resilience and the willingness to kind of overcome some of these challenges. Sun and moon are also trining Uranus, which means in order to make this change, we have to be willing to think differently. We have to be willing to, maybe reassess what we've learned in the past and maybe be open to new data and information, new applications, new technology to be able to kind of help us get through some of these challenges when it comes to Virgo related things. Now that might mean we're going to see we can get more accurate data and analytics when it comes to health and wellness. There might be new apps. There might be new kind of community driven projects and companies that are going to be providing new solutions that's going to shine a light on health and give you more information about what's going on so you can take back your health. You can take control of your health and be better educated about how to maintain your health, how to, incorporate new diet, nutrition related things. So that way we're not feeling like we're in the dark, right? I think that with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, on a personal level, I can't speak for everybody, has materialized as me going, wow, like everything we've learned about the food pyramid is wrong, okay? Everything that we have been told about mental health and the immune system and everything that we've even learned when it comes to like sleep and, being accepting, I think, or just kind of participating in, recreational drinking or drug use or other things that are very Piscean, in nature. I think ultimately it's causing a huge divide, and it's creating an issue where a lot of people are becoming a little paranoid, or they're becoming a little alienated. And I attribute a lot of that to what's happened over the last couple of years too. But I feel like we need to really start looking at what habits we're reaching for that we are using almost as a crutch to just get by. And whether that's food, if it's drinking, if it's drugs, if it's sex, if it's smoking, whatever, what are we doing that we're leaning into that can actually really be self-sabotage, right? That's really the theme of this, is self-sabotage, and kind of coming up with new systems so that way we're holding ourselves accountable and we're creating these new kind of routines so we're not in the same situation 6 months from now. Now, we are going to see, aside from some of those aspects, the solar eclipse is going to in conjunct or quincunx Chiron by about 3 degrees. And obviously Chiron's retrograde in Aries. It's at 26, so it's going to be about food and resources. Certainly individuals facing, this harsh reality of what's going on with, their health and needing to tend to it and heal something. Allergies, inflammations, migraines, issues also regarding the Army veterans or any people that are connected with, the service could very much be Aries. And trying to find ways to actually create new programs to help individuals help themselves or make better decisions, or perhaps even just tackle some of these, financial or economic issues that have really, I think, played a huge role in why we have very unhealthy, kind of like people around the world. And I do think that in conjunct or quincunx, it creates a really kind of awkward angle to Chiron, and it's about adjustments. So the eclipse is going to be kind of showing us where, the themes are connected to Chiron's wounds. So it's highlighting healing identity or assertiveness issues. Yes, this is uncomfortable. There are going to be shifts in self-confidence or independence that are going to come up. But really, it's urging integration of vulnerability for wholeness. Now, we will see Venus in Virgo coming into a square with Uranus in Gemini. And Venus is not totally thrilled being in Virgo. Obviously, health and relationships is going to take a lot of patience and a willingness to kind of work through some of the issues. And whenever we see Venus and Uranus that are in a square, it can represent friction and changes that are going on economically, with how we're spending, what we're consuming. It can also be connecting to changes in relationships and values. So there is some tension there. I do think that, squares always materialize as some kind of tension, but it's also trying to get us to get out of our comfort zone. So when it comes to values, relationships, or finances, many of us will see sudden changes over the next 6 months when it comes to love or money, urging flexibility and breaking free from routine. It can be exciting, but it can also be a little feeling like unstable. And in particular, I think about how, at least the positive is that Mercury is trining Uranus. So we can talk about some of these changes or adjustments that need to be made. And Venus is going to be obviously in Virgo, with that square to Uranus, some of the news and the information that's going to be coming out about, certain food brands, about certain pharmaceutical medications, about certain healthcare, practices, and where this information is coming up is actually challenging and bringing up some of the fallout that's going to be taking place and happening. So, the more that you educate yourself about the medical system, and you see that it really kind of starts very early when you look at, people going to medical school and lacking that sense of real, I think, honest awareness and knowledge that's connected to food and nutrition, and trying to actually prevent people from getting sick. But many of us have realized, I think, over the last couple of decades that there isn't really a lot of money in healing people, right? And there is obviously some institutional resistance, if you look at that opposition to Saturn, from hospitals, international pharmaceutical companies, certainly certain governments that also, monopolize on knowing that they have, I think, weaker people that are kind of, not capable of being able to fend for themselves or take care of themselves. And it does destabilize certain populations. But I also am trying to see the positive in this. And I'm like, all right, well, if some of these, companies need to have some bad publicity, so be it. They're going to definitely see that affect their, I think, stock values or whether or not they can be sustainable in the future. And I also think about how the eclipse is going to sextile Jupiter. So it's going to be teaching a lot of people just generally. Jupiter is knowledge, it's wisdom, it's growth. Jupiter in Cancer is going to be about for better emotional health, better fertility, things that are healthier and happier for the family. I am looking forward to seeing, people realizing that's like certain household products that you would usually clean your house with is actually not safe for you, right? And many people would think about it because they're like, well, I have to have all these things that smell good and this, that, and the other to like clean stuff. But you're going to find out that actually it's not. And certain medications that have been recommended that are like, no, you just take this if you have a headache, or you just take this if you have, some kind of digestional issue, is actually like going to be harmful for the health of families or children, women who are trying to conceive. And so through this awareness, we can actually really make a change in the future. And we can, be cleaning our homes with healthier products, feeding our pets better. We can be eating better. And we can also be kind of teaching future generations, to not make some of the mistakes that we have made and not to just blindly trust what we have been told by the system. Now, Jupiter also does trine Saturn and the North Node in Pisces. So that's positive. I think that with Jupiter trying the North Node, and Jupiter is the ruler of the North Node, and also it's the dispositor of Saturn, this basically means that we can see expanding growth towards destiny, right? And it's also about, fortunate opportunities and emotional nurturing, intuition, spiritual paths, and really aligning with our soul's purpose. Now that trine to Saturn is nice. You're going to see that more perfect over the fall, but it is kind of starting up now that Saturn is retrograde. And with Jupiter coming into a trine with Saturn and Pisces, I feel like this is really supporting some kind of structured expansion in compassionate areas, or where we're reworking or rethinking whether or not there's going to be transparency, or if there's going to be honesty, or there's going to be new regulations or guidelines. Like, it can actually be really beneficial for the future of homes, families, certainly laws, and anything kind of connected to, national laws, depending on the country that you live in. On the flip side, we do see Jupiter in a square with Chiron and Aries. So it's still bringing up some of those inflamed wounds and the challenges of optimism versus the reality of the situation. And that, people are really struggling, I think, to like afford homes or, be independent, or people are struggling because they're alone or they don't feel very optimistic about the future. And I think this is about balancing growth with discipline and also addressing insecurities and trying to kind of find better confidence. Now, Mars is slightly in opposition to Chiron. So where some of these personal wounds are impacting our ability to have fairness and diplomacy in relationships, Mars technically by sign is squaring Chiron and Jupiter. So it's making Jupiter a major focal point during this time. So this can also be very emotional, but it can incentivize us to kind of get our home in order. At least that's how I'm kind of looking at it. And Mars at 29 degrees of Libra, there is another 29 here. Okay, so there's a lot of critical degrees that are kind of coming up. We've got planets that are either in like 0 or 1 degree, right? Or we have planets that are like at 29 degrees, okay, or 28 degrees. So there's some things ending, some things beginning. So my interpretation with Mars at 29 is it's also saying this is a huge turning point for relationships, for the legal system. There could be some major changes that are going to be happening, revolving around the future of people's legal abilities or rights, to have the opportunity or the ability to, be able to recoup or recover something as a result of lack of governance over health. So, I think of people who were suing their employers over, the pandemic because of having to leave their position. I think of, there's probably going to be some pretty prominent court hearings that are going to be happening. That's going to open the floodgates for some people to be like, well, do I feel like I need to be compensated? Have I had or sustained certain medical conditions or ailments or issues? We may see that. And obviously Mars in conjuncts or quincunxes Saturn and Neptune as well. So relationships are going to be tested. I think you'll see this out in the world, that there's going to be not only the division because of the opposition with the eclipse in Saturn, but there's going to be some people that are going to go, I just can't, I can't partner with you on this. Like usually we see eye to eye on things, but like the moral obligation to say, you know, this is right or this is wrong, and really be exposing some of the crime and the corruption and the lack of leadership, and where people are, I think, getting or partnering with certain people because there is some kind of financial incentivization, you know, to kind of get them to just go along with things and just take the money and not say anything. And so people are going to get called out on that. And I think we're going to see certain, you know, professional, romantic, and kind of like international or political relationships that are going to be tested as a result of that. And obviously Mars is at the late degree, so it is coming into a square with Pluto. So through some of this like kind of crisis in diplomacy, through people not seeing eye to eye, especially politically, or I think, you know, in the legal realm where we start to see some of this stuff coming up, it's going to put pressure and it's going to wake up the collective and make people realize, oh my God, you know, like certain people are partnering with certain countries, and we're going to see certain companies are, you know, partnering with, you know, certain people who are promoting products because there's that financial incentive, and they're going to start to kind of see through some of like the BS. Now, with Jupiter coming into, with Mars coming into a square with Pluto, obviously that's a little intense. I do feel like there can be some challenges in relationships with our social connections. We can also see a little bit more intensity and some kind of like bickering that can be going online, revolving around what's going on with collective events as well. And I think with that square, it's going to intensify power struggles or transformation in relationships. So we will see conflicts over, you know, control or justice, but potential for passionate rebirth through some of this confrontation that's potentially coming up. If you guys want to see more about these eclipses, definitely click the links below. Check out my my webinar that I did on the eclipses. Head over to my website if you want to see the full one there. And also this month, if you join my level 4 memberships on my channel, you will actually get that included for free. You'll be able to have a members only link that you can see on my YouTube channel where you can go and watch that. So if you are level 4, go check it out. With that being said, let's talk all things connecting to my predictions for the 12 rising signs. And I just want to remind you guys, you know, because this is at 29 degrees and because it's also going to have Mercury, the ruler, in Libra, I highly recommend not just looking at where the eclipse is taking place in Virgo. Some action needs to be taking place in Virgo, so that way you guys can be better prepared as we're going into Libra season. As a reminder, 28, 29 degrees of Virgo placements or the mutables, okay, you guys are going to be feeling this. 0 to about 2 degrees of the cardinals, you guys are going to be feeling this as well. I am a Western astrologer. That's the kind of astrology I like to practice. I'm going to be showing you guys the perspective from the whole rising signs. You may have to, if you use Placidus, adjust your chart a little bit and listen to another sign. But let me know, like come back to this video and like leave me a comment, or let me know how you're feeling with some of the effects and what you're kind of realizing about some of these transits as we're coming into eclipse season. All right, so let's start first with my Aries and my Aries risings. What's up, Aries? You guys are going to be doing the solar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your natal 6th house. Now, obviously, the 6th house deals with health, work, routine, and service. So a lot of what I've been talking about kind of generally for the collective is coming up for you if you're in early degrees Aries. I think the themes of this eclipse and really kind of tying in oppositions to Saturn and also Mercury kind of being in your 7th house, the themes are going to include, you know, new beginnings when it comes to your daily habits. Okay, so things like job changes, wellness routines, you know, a focus on maybe releasing, you know, overwork. And Mercury in your 7th house of partnerships is bringing a much more kind of diplomatic, you know, opportunity to kind of connect with other people. So therapists, partners, business partners, friends, other people can come in to kind of help you as you kind of go through some of these changes that can support some of the health habit changes that you actually would like to make. And there could be collaborations that can kind of be coming up as well. Now, it does seem to me like, yeah, there could be some shocking, surprising things going on with somebody at work. Maybe you're getting some medical results. Maybe you're focusing more on getting back to the gym. Obviously, the opposition to Saturn in the 12th house is kind of showing you where there needs to be a better mind, body, spirit kind of balance. And where the Pisces moon was like, hey, I'm feeling kind of blue, or I'm feeling like I need more rest. Now this is about jumping into action and going, okay, now I'm ready to initiate something new under the solar eclipse. Saturn rules your 10th house of career, so it can mean that you're having some frustrations regarding work and your schedule, dealing with coworkers, lack of guidance or support by a boss. It can definitely be found as Saturn is kind of, MIA in your 12th house. But the opposition to Neptune on your ascendant can definitely leave you feeling like a little fatigued or exhausted. And I think some of the aspects involving Mars can do a lot of the same things. Square Pluto, where there could be some tension with groups at work, opposed Chiron, where it's making you feel like you're definitely taking all of that on emotionally or internally. And I think the positive here is that, many of you guys might find that this is a time where you're really expecting, a new start. So new jobs, new habits, new routines. Maybe, you're kind of approaching work in a different way. Maybe you're getting a new job. Maybe you're getting into a new office space. But whatever it is, what you want to watch for with the eclipse is not a good time to be doing health routine stuff. Okay. So if you're trying to do surgical procedures, if you're trying to do laser stuff, if you're trying to get health results, we never know what we're going to get with an eclipse. So there could be something health-wise that comes out of the blue unexpectedly. There could also be some stuff that's kind of coming up where you're like, actually, it's just more about me being more mindful of how much work I'm bringing home and how it's impacting me and my sleep or my emotions. So I would just say, watch for improved efficiency. It's going to lead to better balance. I also feel like this is about avoiding perfectionism and seeking partner input of some kind or some kind of support from another person as you go through some of these changes. Good luck, Aries. Let me know what happens. All right, we've got Taurus and Taurus rising. You guys are going to experience a solar eclipse taking place in a fellow sister Earth sign in the sign of Virgo in your natal 5th house. If you happen to be like I would say a later degree Taurus or Taurus rising, 27, 28, 29 degrees, this will be trining you. So it's going to be a little bit friendlier, I think, than some of the other signs. Certainly the 5th house is not a bad place to have an eclipse because the 5th house is taking place in the part of your chart that deals with creativity, romance, children, fun, right? Hobbies. And a solar eclipse here can initiate you doing more of the things that you love. Now, the tie to the South Node is interesting because it might mean that you're reconnecting with your inner child. You're going back to an old hobby. You're hearing from an old lover. Maybe it means that it's a time where you're trying to create your own business or you're being more artistic, or maybe you're thinking about trying to get pregnant or having a child. Certainly children can be a big theme. So if you already have kids, there can be a focus on your children here or on an inner kind of child level. When you see the eclipse come through, I think, the conjunction to Mercury, which is going to be in your 5th house, in your 6th house, is kind of saying, hey, how can I make more time for better balance in my schedule? How can I make more time to do the artistic, creative things that I want? How can I make sure that I'm getting in those date nights with my partner? How am I going to stay on a kind of like a deadline, or be meeting all my deadlines when it comes to my creative habits? Do you need to, hire somebody to kind of help take care of your children? Are you thinking about, hiring somebody to help you finish a creative project? Because Mercury in the 6th house can be the help. Now, I do think that new creative projects or romantic sparks are likely. And this is also about releasing self-doubt and expression because it's coming from your South Node in the 5th. And Mercury in the 6th is really tying in by organizing your daily life to support more joy, like balanced schedules or hobbies. I think the other thing that's interesting is like at the time of the eclipse, obviously Venus, your chart ruler, is in the 5th house. So it's saying that you're really willing to tune more into what's going to bring you joy or fulfillment. Obviously there's other things that are kind of going on, but the primary one I would say would be Venus in the 5th is saying, yes, it is time to do more of these things that you enjoy. However, it is opposing Saturn in Pisces in your 11th house. So you're kind of feeling like, well, how do I create and also make time for my other goals or make time for my career? How do I date and also still make sure that I'm able to go and have a social life and have friends and do things? Or it can be a sense of you going, I don't really feel like I have a lot of people I can kind of share what I'm creating with. And it's pushing you to kind of, find joy on your own terms, even outside of certain social connections. So for you guys, I would say, a new hobby or a flirtation can emerge. Yes, big news regarding your children, or you could be finding out you're pregnant. So watch for those child-related matters. And it's a very fertile time for artistic output. So I would just recommend, communicating I think your needs at work a little bit more. Ask for help so you can kind of free up a little bit of your playtime. Good luck, Taurus. All right, we've got Gemini and Gemini rising. You guys are going to be feeling the effects of this solar eclipse in the sign of Virgo taking place in your natal 4th house. If you happen to be a late degree Gemini, okay, so 27, 28 to 29 degrees, this is squaring you, so it's going to be a little bit more tricky. And also, you're also dealing with the Saturn square at the same time. So take into consideration just how big these eclipses can be, because you're seeing planets that are going through those degrees in angular houses. I think a solar eclipse in the 4th house is an interesting one, because it does seem to kind of indicate that whatever is going on may be a little bit more private for you guys, okay? So the 4th house is the house of home, it's family, roots, emotional foundations. So it could be your roommates, your parents, it could be your physical home. You might be cleaning out the house, cleaning up the house, trying to move, trying to sell something, trying to, figure out or manifest a new home situation. With the South Node there, it's definitely time to do a deep cleaning. Emotionally, this is a time of kind of purging and detoxifying things as well. Now, I think what's positive is that, if you are setting intentions to do these things, and you may see it unfold over the next 6 months, this Mercury rulership, it happens to be your ruler as well. And Mercury is in your 5th house, where it's really saying some of the changes or the clearing out is actually more connected to the 5th house. So it could be things like, oh, we're having a kid, or, my kid's coming, home to visit me, or I'm moving in with my boyfriend, or I'm moving out with my partner, those things can be happening. And Mercury at the very least is trining Uranus in your sign. So you're feeling a little bit more willing to kind of improvise, make changes, maybe be willing to move and kind of thinking differently. And it's also trining Pluto in your 9th house. So a lot of you guys are going to be feeling like there is a need to create a creative space, or maybe to have an entertainment space, or a place where you can do your crafting or your hobbies, or maybe you just need more space for a kid. I think the challenge here is the fact that you not only see this happening in mutable signs where it's squaring you, where there's tension between what's going on at home and what's going on at work, but also it's opposing Saturn in your 10th house of career. So there's a lot of you going, okay, I'm super busy with what's going on work-wise, or I'm very focused on my responsibilities out in the world right now. And it's really showing me this tension between, what's happened professionally and what's going on, and the impact on my home, my family, or my emotions. So when I look at this, I'm like, all right, well, at the very least, you're going to have home improvements and family releases for new security. Mercury in your 5th is really amplifying inspiring creative folks and creative talks with loved ones, or fun home decor ideas. I will say, with the opposition to Saturn, some of you guys may be feeling like there is some stress with in-laws, or there can be some challenges that are going on revolving around relocating and moving. Certainly Venus square Uranus says that as well, where there can be a little bit of tension with a female relative, or kind of keeping the peace at home, and you're feeling a little rebellious with Uranus in your sign. What to watch for is possible moves. Family dynamics are likely to shift. Watch for opportunities for ancestral healing. And I do predict a stronger emotional base that's going to be coming over these next few months. You just really want to focus on balancing fun with home duties, and having better or more so open dialogue with the people that you live with. Good luck. For Cancer and Cancer rising, hope you guys are doing well. You're going to have this solar eclipse taking place in the sign of Virgo in your natal 3rd house. Well, Cancer, you're ruled by the moon. So lunar eclipses, solar eclipses, they impact you. Certainly, this is very personal for you, as you have your 2nd house ruler of money and your personal ruler, the moon, meeting in the 3rd house. So this kind of represents a blank slate when it comes to communication, learning, siblings, short trips, and also anything with websites, podcasts, social media, traveling vehicles can also be a huge theme here as well. So the themes of the eclipse, really kind of tie in, I think, number one, to Mercury. And especially if you happen to be an early degree Cancer rising, if you're 0 to 2 degrees, this is going to be squaring you. So keep in mind that it is going to feel almost similar to like, Libra season when planets start going into your fourth house and you're focusing on your relationships with your home and family and you feel tested. I do think that with Mercury being in the fourth house, really what it's saying is it's taking into consideration self-undoing, maybe, hesitation with communication or family talks, particularly with neighbors, with siblings. There can be some like dreams that you have about family members or some gut feelings that make you like want to check in with people. And there can be new ways of expressing ideas or studies when you have the solar eclipse in your third house. And maybe you're studying from home, maybe you're learning more about your family, and certainly releasing scattered thoughts, I think is going to be a huge theme. With Mercury in your fourth house, it's linking harmonizing family discussions or home-based learning. So, working with siblings, working with family, documents, communications, and things over home and property. Leases can also be kind of coming up here as well. Some of you guys might be considering moving. Some of you guys might be considering getting a new vehicle. Now, where this is a little tricky is you happen to have the eclipse in opposition to Saturn. So you're the moon. Saturn represents, partnerships and other people. So it can be kind of highlighting where, there's family relationships at a distance, or you're trying to, find ways to connect with people that aren't close to you, or you're trying to find ways to better communicate with in-laws. Saturn in your ninth can be long distance travel, education. It can also be legal matters. And it's showing that there is some tension or having something that is like further away and harder to kind of communicate or relate to certain people and like not seeing eye to eye. The other thing I think about is just the fact that, the squares that you've been having with Mars to Jupiter and Jupiter that's building into a square with Chiron is it's actually kind of showing you have to be willing to go the distance. And if that means, calling your sister or calling your mom, once a week, or making that effort to go and see family, or being maybe a little bit more open to, traveling and connecting with some of these relationships at a distance, that's important. And there can be conversations about relationships as well, because Saturn represents your seventh. So kind of going back and forth in a long distance relationship or traveling and meeting somebody can definitely be a theme here. I would just watch for, new learning opportunities, setting up new websites, focusing on new communication and sibling bonds, and watch for potential tech glitches. You can see that, especially when it comes to issues with vehicles or problems with communications with phones or internet. And I do predict that this will eventually bring you, I think, a clearer mindset. You just really want to use diplomacy in home talks to make sure that you're really enhancing understanding of your relationship with other people, even if they're a little bit further away. Good luck, Cancer. All right, Leo and Leo rising, you guys are going to be doing the solar eclipse in Virgo in your natal second house. And being ruled by the sun, the solar eclipse is definitely pretty pertinent to you guys. The moon is going to represent what's going on behind the scenes and kind of your subconscious. So there is this second opportunity to set new intentions when it comes to better finances, self-esteem, focusing on your kind of resources and your material goals. So finance, values, possessions, self-worth is all kind of coming up with the solar eclipse in your second. I do think some of the themes that come up for you guys, especially with Mercury being the ruler in your third, is it's saying like you have to start communicating and telling people what you need or what it is that you want. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to kind of like work with other people and be diplomatic. And financial resets or value realignments are very likely. And this is going to be a South Node eclipse. So it's about really releasing material attachment. Mercury in your third is really aiding you through negotiations and learning more about money. It does trine Pluto in your relationship house, so you can have in-depth conversations about moving, vehicles, or contracts. It is also trining Uranus in your social zone. So I really see this as an opportunity where if Leo or Leo risings really want to have another push to bring more money in, now is the time to just start telling people like what you have to offer and what you want. Now, the opposition that you're going to see to Saturn, it is tricky because Saturn also rules relationships, and Saturn is also, directly kind of tied to scheduling and health. So, in the second and eighth house axis, you're going to hear, well, there's a solar eclipse, money is coming your way or money is coming due. I think a lot of you guys have already been dealing with that since the Pisces lunar eclipse that we had on the 7th, but now is a time to really kind of put yourself out there and be confident when it comes to going after what you want. I would really advise you guys with the sun in opposition to Saturn to come to terms with what you're willing to release. It could be cleaning out a closet. It could be cutting something out of your diet. It could be budgeting. It could also be willing to kind of like give up some of your free time, maybe, to focus more on working and kind of meeting some of your financial goals. But with Saturn in the eighth, it's both a combination of certain partnerships or relationship financial matters where somebody's not pulling their weight or they're not making money. So you're having to feel like you have to do more. And it can also be highlighting, I think, for many of you guys where you're having to, ask for that income boost, ask for better benefits. You're asking for your partner to contribute more. You're maybe dipping into savings or investments and finding other ways to kind of bring resources in, or maybe you're going to be upping your fees if you have like a client-based business. Hopefully that's helpful for you guys. Definitely let me know, how this kind of materializes for you. I think ultimately for my Leo risings, it's really about knowing your worth, and, willingly kind of letting go or releasing things and implementing budget changes and watch for the income opportunities that can come. Spending impulses are very strong with an eclipse here. So I would just say, focus on boosting your self-esteem and communicating your values very clearly so you can attract more abundance into your life. Good luck. Virgos and Virgo risings. Oh man, I feel like all the last week or so, everybody I've been talking to is like Virgo risings. And I'm well aware of some of the changes that you guys are going through. So I hope that this is a positive one for you guys. Many of you guys are already in the change since this recent, lunar eclipse that we saw in Pisces, your opposite sign in your seventh. This does tie into some of the things that are going on right now. So you had opportunities for partnerships, relationships, alignment, big changes and decisions in relationships. And now it's kind of like, well, where do I stand after that, right? What do I want in relationships? Who am I? And in order to embrace who you're becoming, you have to, let go of who you used to be. Now, the solar eclipse will be taking place if you're a Virgo rising in your first house. But any Virgo placement, I would say 27, 28, 29 degrees, you're going to be feeling the effects of this particular eclipse, so pay close attention. What does this tell me? Well, it's a second new moon in your sign, so the universe is giving you many opportunities to kind of get your shift in order. But I think that this is about your identity, your body, your appearance, and personal goals and kind of initiatives that you're taking. Obviously, the sun rules the 12th house, so it can be about your dreams, but it can also be about self-undoing and where you're kind of isolating yourself from other people or from from companionship. And also the moon is kind of connecting to your goals. So it's kind of like on one hand, you're going, okay, what am I, manifesting? What do I see for myself? What do I want? On the other hand, it can be showing you clear as day where you need to get out of your own way. And I say that lovingly, like I went through all the southern eclipses the last 2 years, so I know exactly how this goes. And it can be really overwhelming, but I think there's a lot of opportunity here for you guys if you're willing to look for it. Now, the positive is that the ruler of the eclipse obviously is Mercury, and Mercury is in your second house of money, income, personal values. So this is very strong for Virgo risings because it's basically saying that there is this personal reinvention that's coming through the solar eclipse where you're releasing, an old outdated version of yourself. And Mercury in your second house is applying, this through balancing finances, a new identity, a new sense of worth coming in, speaking more positively about yourself, believing in yourself, knowing your worth. And Mercury's trining Pluto, so it also stems through healthier habits, changes with work and routine, as well as trines to Uranus in your 10th house, which could also kind of keep you, a little bit more on your toes when it comes to changes with work. But I could see a lot of you guys being like, you know what, I'm going getting a fresh haircut. I'm going to be getting some new clothes. I'm going and, I'm starting a new job. I'm going on a job interview. I'm working out. Now I'm starting to see the changes. I'm letting go of these bad habits. So detoxing, purging, clearing things out is definitely a theme here. I think the other positive is that you have Venus in your sign. So it's like Venus is protecting you. She is coming through saying you are worth it. Invest in yourself, but maybe do it in a more natural way. Eat better, right? Focus on things that are clean, especially if it's health or beauty related. And make sure that you're investing in yourself first and not overly prioritizing things. The challenge of this is, in my opinion, the fact that this is opposing Saturn in your 7th house. And the 7th house, and literally could be me, like your astrologer. It could be your therapist. It could be your spouse. It could be your business partner. Saturn also rules romance and children. So, everybody's going to have a different experience. But some Virgo risings I'm seeing are going, I'm just not connecting well with my kid. We're having relational issues. I'm having other people that are like, this is really hard for me to stay in this relationship when, my partner is going through a lot of changes and I'm trying to figure out how to not get sucked into that and whether or not this is for me. I'm seeing other people that are saying, hey, I can't find anybody. I can't find love. And I attribute all that to Saturn because Saturn is going to be a bit of like a taskmaster, and he's going to, through the opposition, he's not going to deny, he's just going to delay something. So if relationships have been breaking down as a result of the recent eclipse, this can be showing you now you're reinventing yourself now that you're single, or you're separating yourself from your partner's kind of drama. But it can also mean that there can be a lot of feedback, which can feel heavy or challenging for partners, about what you're doing wrong or where you're not showing up for them, when in reality, you're not showing up for yourself in some ways. So you want to use the solar eclipse to really focus on, well, who am I? What are my goals? Separate of being in a relationship, what am I doing for myself? How can I invest in myself? And I would watch for image updates. I think there's going to be some confidence surges that are going to happen. Obviously, watch for health signals because Mercury trines Pluto. But I think that this could also mean for many of you guys that you're going to be feeling more empowered when it comes to your self-view and really learning to negotiate more of what your own needs are in relationships, as well as money matters. Virgo, I hope it's a good one for you. Definitely give me some feedback and let me know how you're feeling. And I think you're going to be really surprised to see just how different things are 6 months' time from now. Libras and Libra risings, you guys are going to be doing the solar eclipse in the sign of Virgo in your natal 12th house. So a little bit more private and subconscious for you guys, obviously, because it's the sign before you come into your birthday season if you're a Libra sun. But if you happen to be a Libra rising, I would say like 0 to 2 degrees, as with all the cardinal signs, you are impacted by this. And I'm especially kind of intrigued with, I think, the Virgo and the Libra rising horoscopes, because it's very much connected to Libra. You just don't see it yet. So as you have the solar eclipse in your 12th house, this is the house of subconscious, spirituality, endings, hidden matters, your dreams, foreign lands, losses certainly is a theme of the 12th house, hidden enemies, all that fun stuff. And at the time of the eclipse, you are going to see the ruler Mercury sitting in your sign. So just kind of reflecting, like being a Libra rising, like I think about how the last couple of years there have been some retrogrades that have gone either from Libra back into Virgo, Mercury retrogrades, or there's been a Mercury retrograde in the 12th. And those have been times that I've noticed that I'm just like, I need more sleep, or like I want to be away from people, or like I felt like I was like drowning, with like bad habits. So that is something I would reflect on, because that is symbolic, I think, of the solar eclipse and the South Node, and also Venus, your ruler, being in the 12th house. However, because Mercury is the ruler, it's saying that there are things that are shaking out and clearing out for you subconsciously that you're now becoming aware of, right? Mercury on your ascendant is now you're more alert. Now you're able to communicate more. It can represent there is a secret, or there is some kind of information that you're getting ready to release, or some kind of an announcement. And Mercury doesn't just rule your 12th house, it also rules your 9th. So it can be about some Libras or Libra risings getting ready to do a lot more emotional, psychological exploration. So things like meditation, hypnosis, past life regression, therapy can be coming up, but also traveling, learning, studying mysticism, visiting foreign lands, that can be something as well. And obviously the 12th house does have other challenges. So it can be where you're isolated, it could be your bedroom, it could also mean your mental health, and stuff connecting to healing centers. So hospitals, detox centers, that kind of stuff. Now, Mercury does trine Pluto in your 5th house. So I see this as a positive, where if you're willing to kind of like get your subconscious in order, or clean up, your closets, or, your bedroom, or other things, you're going to be able to see more or think more clearly, and you're going to be able to create better and maybe overcome, negative self-talk or fear and anxiety about 5th house topics. So it could be children, it could be your love life, it could be feeling more creative. And it's also going to trine Uranus in the 9th house, which means that you're going to be more optimistic and open-minded about what you're learning and what you believe in. So it's very spiritual and psychological for you guys in a nutshell. I think that with Venus in the 12th house, it is saying that, you're really focusing on having better sleep, or having more rest, or having much more of like a spiritual practice. And many of you guys will find that there is opportunities over the next month or so for, inner healing, spiritual awakenings, significant dreams, and releasing hidden fears. Now, Mercury in your 1st house is bringing a clear self-expression, and it's really about kind of finding the words for some of these subconscious insights. So dreams are really significant. Write them down. There could be retreats for clarity that come up for you. Watch for isolation tendencies. And I do really think that a lot of you guys are going to have this newfound sense of profound inner peace And you want to use personal talks to really kind of integrate some of your shadow fears and concerns. And this does oppose Saturn in your 6th house. So it's also showing you where if you're not sleeping well, if you're not doing well mentally, if there's a lot of stress or anxiety going on, it's about being a little bit better or tighter with your schedules and your habits and your fitness and your routine or your work schedule. And obviously Saturn rules family. So there can be some really strong intuitive hits about some changes that are going to be coming up with your health, your home, as well as your family. Watch for those breakthroughs that you'll have, Libra. Journal them down, write them down. And obviously the early degree Libras and Libra risings can have very significant changes to their body and their appearance and also pregnancy over the next 6 months. Good luck. All right, Scorpio and Scorpio risings. What's going on, Scorpio? You're doing this solar eclipse in Virgo in your natal 11th house. And this will be obviously dealing with 11th house matters. So it's going to be connected to your friends, your goals, your groups, your social life, aspirations, and also networks and community. At the time of the eclipse, you're going to have Mercury, the ruler, in Libra in your 12th house. So off the top of my head, I think about how, new social circles or goals can come in under the solar eclipse. But it's also about releasing any misaligned kind of like connections that you have with people where you feel like certain relationships are getting eclipsed out of your life, or, there's some unexpected conversation, or maybe there's somebody who isn't as communicative with you. That can definitely happen. And I do think that I would be watching for really kind of focusing on, ties more to like intuitive or private communication. Dreams can be very strong. And Mercury is going to be in a trine to Pluto, which I think is actually pretty helpful for you. I feel like this is about you going like, I had a dream or I have a gut feeling about something that's going to change or transform me, my home life, my family. And it's also going to trine Uranus in the 8th house. So a lot of Scorpio and Scorpio risings are like, ooh, I feel something's coming, like what's about to happen. And it might actually indicate that there was like a friend that felt really close or felt like family that is now falling away. Now, certainly the South Node can bring somebody back too, just full disclosure. Somebody can be returning to your life who you were friends with, who you haven't seen for some time. And it feels like, oh, there's this alignment with like my soul family. The other thing to think about is, not just Pluto, where honestly, the eclipse trine Pluto was wonderful for you, especially if you're saying, hey, I really want to reconnect with friends from the past, or I want to have, group kind of collaborations, or I want to join a group or start one. But we also see Mars at the critical degree. So Mars is your other ruler, and it's at 29 degrees of Libra. It's about to cross into your sign, and it's starting to square Pluto. Wow. You feel like your energy is about to come back. You're about to feel like a little bit more pumped, I think, to get up, get active, and like create some sense of home or emotional change. And maybe you feel like this eclipse incentivizes you to get the show on the road with some of that change. And maybe you're feeling like you need support from other people as you go through that. I do think that, I would be really focusing on group involvements or wish manifestations. An eclipse here is great for wishes. And also watch for some kind of friendship drama. I do predict that even though there's going to be some changes in your social life, there's going to be new people coming in that's going to feel more aligned and like more like your tribe. And this is about reflecting privately also before sharing some of your dreams or your beliefs with other people. Now, the opposition to Saturn, which is in your 5th house, is going to be more about whether or not you feel like friends are, available and, willing to hang out, and if you feel left out. Whether or not there is good communication with certain friends, or if you're having to communicate at a distance. It can also represent for you where you're realizing that, it's harder for you to feel joy or feel happy or connected or be able to share some of your positive, relationship things or things connected to your hobbies, like with others. And if you're an artist, if you're a creator of any kind, with Saturn in your 5th house, it's like you have something that you want to show a community. And I would say you can do that. You're just going to want to be selective with which community you're sharing that with and which friends you're kind of aligning with. But I think for the most part, I think you guys are going to find that this is going to be a very strong turning point where you're focusing less on what other people want. You're focusing more on what makes you happy or brings you joy through Saturn going back into your 5th house and also the North Node being there as well. So whether it's to your hobbies, if it's your kids, if it's a relationship, You're really prioritizing that before some of your, friends or kind of social connections goals. And it might ruffle some feathers, but so be it, because I think that you're really feeling incentivized to really see some bigger changes when it comes to your life, your home, or, family related matters. That's going to be more important. Hopefully that's helpful for you, my Scorpios. Let me know what happens. Sagittarius and Sagittarius risings. Okay, so I think all of you guys will feel it, but particularly if you're an earlier degree a later degree Sag rising, 27, 28, 29 degrees, this will be squaring you. I know, not easy. I'm seeing the Saturn square too, and Uranus is in your opposite sign. Sag, think about what has happened over the last month. Okay, so there was the lunar eclipse in your 4th house where it was, big emotional home and family kind of conclusions and completions, and whether it was financial or moves or changes with the house or selling things or dealing with family. Now it's like, what am I going to do about it? And naturally, with the South Node, I think moving through your 10th house, many of you guys are changing jobs, your status is changing. Maybe you're not as incentivized to be out in the world. You're wanting to kind of be home more, especially as Saturn and Neptune's kind of migrating back into Pisces in your 4th house, where feeling grounded or dealing with some heavy karmic family stuff is definitely going on. Now, the solar eclipse in theory in your 10th house brings the opportunity to set new intentions when it comes to your career, your reputation, your authority, and your public life. But it can also eclipse things out of your life. Things can be coming up that you didn't see that was going to change with a company you work for, with a parent, maybe with your own career path. So we can see all kinds of changes that can be happening at this critical degree. Now, it's ruled by Mercury. And Mercury sits in Libra in your 11th, which means that likely you're getting ready to either make some big announcement to a group of people. Maybe you're focusing on the relationships that you have with people at work, and you're trying to do a little bit more of incentivizing the group to work together, or, prioritizing, team efforts, to kind of work together. It could also mean that you're getting ready to make a big announcement. And Mercury also rules your 7th house of relationships, and it's going to trine that. So it's possible that part of the big changes coming with your status is you're telling your friends, hey, me and so just broke up, or hey, we're thinking about getting married, or oh my God, I just met somebody. It's also trining Pluto in your 3rd house. So there's lots of opportunities for relationship changes, traveling, exciting communications, and major change in how you connect with other people. So the solar eclipse in the 10th house and the tide of Mercury, I really feel is like career pivots, opportunities for recognition or releasing outdated ambitions that you don't align with anymore. And Mercury in your 11th house is supporting this through networking or group ideas. Now, what you want to watch for is like job offers can happen. There can be, boss interactions. There could be somebody, who gets laid off. Unfortunately, that can happen with this transit. And definitely public scrutiny is like a huge theme here with the South Node eclipses in your 10th house. There could be a lot more of you kind of feeling like you're in the spotlight, or it's harder to get recognition, or that there is something kind of going on where you're like, something is just not meshing with the job that I'm at. And, I predict that there can and there will be professional advancement. The key to this advancement is collaborating with groups or friends or other people for success. The challenge is that you are going to be seeing this will oppose Saturn in your 4th house. So it's almost like you're feeling tired and you don't necessarily know if you want to push forward with some of the stuff that's going on at work. You feel more like retreating, and Saturn in the 4th house is like, maybe it's not time to be going for, the promotion. Maybe it's not time to be like doing all of these things. And you might be, putting some things on the back burner and saying, okay, I'm actually going to be, promoting other people taking that position. It can also mean that job changes can be brought on by home and family changes. So, taking care of kids, dealing with parents, having to move, heavy emotional things that you're kind of moving through is also going to make you kind of pivot and reevaluate some of your goals when it comes to your career. The positive is that I do see Jupiter, your ruler in Cancer, in the 8th house. Yes, it is invisible, which is why you're not really feeling the support yet. Does trine Saturn in the North Node, helping you actually transform your emotions in your home and bring in much needed extra resources and emotional shifts. And it sextiles this solar eclipse. So it can mean that some of you guys might realize that, pumping the brakes a little bit and really reevaluating your long-term career goals, you might have some cushion, financially to work with. You might also feel like, some much needed change needs to happen, and you're kind of doing a excavation of your professional life because you need to for emotional reasons. Sagittarius, let me know what happens. Good luck with this eclipse. Capricorn, Capricorn rising. You guys are going to be doing this solar eclipse in Virgo in your natal 9th house and a fellow sister earth sign. If you are a late degree Capricorn, 27, 28, 29 degrees, this will trine you. So it's a little bit friendlier. If you happen to be 0 to 2 degrees of Capricorn or Capricorn rising, this squares you and you're definitely going to be feeling the pressure. But truth be told, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, the next 3 signs do have some challenges because Saturn is opposing, and Saturn is your ruler if you're a Capricorn rising. So I want to start off with, first kind of talking about the solar eclipse in the 9th. This means that this is the house of travel. This is also about higher learning, beliefs, expansion, your philosophy about the world, teachers, mentors, lawyers, in-laws, but also like publishing and legal matters kind of come up through here as well. So when you have a solar eclipse, it's tying in your 8th house of joint resources and other people's money and relationship in the 9th. So it can be basically saying some Capricorn and Capricorn risings are dealing with a little bit of back and forth with family relationships over property and money. Maybe they're dealing with legal matters over immigration or moving or, legal documents revolving around visas. It can also mean positive things, like you guys are going and, starting college for the first time, or you're going back to school, or you're reconnecting with an old mentor. The positive is that Mercury is the ruler and it's sitting in your 10th. So it does mean that, connecting with somebody who can kind of be a guide and give you some mentorship or give you some advice can really help you when it comes to your professional reputation, your career. And it also means that some of you guys might be deciding to go back to school because you want to change careers. Now, I do think that, career, stuff is important because Mercury is in the 10th house, but all in all, I think that this is really about new philosophies or adventures and releasing rigid views. Now, Mercury in the 10th applies by communicating your beliefs more in a career context. So do you go on a trip that changed your philosophy about your work? Do you travel more for work? Are there legal matters connecting to work? All of these things are possible. And I think that I'm not crazy about traveling on eclipses. Like being in the air on an eclipse is not my favorite. Being in the air, being at an operating table, making big life decisions, big financial decisions. No, when we're having eclipses, things are not completely clear. We want to wait for the dust to settle. So trying to book a flight or, trying to book a trip around the eclipse is not a good idea. And you might find that over the next 6 months, there's going to be this theme of, well, I want to travel, I want to get out there, I want to do more, but I can't, because Saturn is in the 3rd house. This is more short distance trips. This is more, traveling kind of locally, learning remotely, and not trying to plan too much, I think, in terms of like international traveling or even education over the 6 months if possible. So, trips and studies can come up. Watch for legal matters. And this is definitely about broadening your horizons and trying to use diplomacy in professional presentations. You may find with the moon in opposition to Saturn, you're not seeing eye to eye with somebody over like cultural, religious, or philosophical matters because the moon rules that. This can also mean that there's a sense of having to travel back and forth between a relationship, or there's a back and forth that you're having with a neighbor or a sibling. And the sun in opposition to Saturn looks like there is a difference of opinion revolving around finances and money. So, if you're like a Capricorn rising going through like a separation right now, it could be there's like a, legal battle that's kind of brewing. Certainly, Saturn and Neptune going retrograde in your 4th can indicate that, it's like, well, who is financially responsible for taking care of an aging parent? Or, do I have enough money to go back to school? That kind of stuff can come up. And I also think that the positive is that many of you guys will see a shift in your belief system, or even taking a trip or taking a break can be very beneficial for figuring out who you need to align yourself with professionally to change something about your work, your finances, and also your career. But yeah, whenever you see an eclipse in opposition to your chart ruler, things definitely get a little sticky. Mars is at 29 degrees in your 10th house as well. So definitely you feel like this is a critical turning point where you have to really make some big decisions about what you call home, or, where you feel safe, because that's going to have an impact on ultimately the work that you're doing out in the world. Hopefully that's helpful. Capricorn and Capricorn rising, let me know what happens for you guys. We've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the solar eclipse taking place in Virgo. And let me switch this, go back a little bit. And that's going to be taking place for you, Aquarius, in your natal 9th house. Excuse me, I take that back. Your 8th house. So the solar eclipse in Virgo is in your 8th. And obviously, this isn't a sign that inconjuncts or quincunxes you, but at least it's trining both Pluto and Uranus. So this will be interesting for Aquarius risings. So the 8th house is a house that deals with psychological matters, joint finances, death, intimacy, taxes, all of like the karmic kind of like entanglements that we have with other people. So shared resources, transformation, and mysteries are likely under this solar eclipse that's going to be brewing in your 8th house. Now, it is ruled by Mercury, and at the time of the solar eclipse, Mercury is in your 9th, and it's in a fellow sister air sign, Libra. And I think with that placement, really what it means is that, okay, the eclipse is about deep bonds or financial mergers, maybe releasing trust issues, and Mercury in the 9th is about bringing balanced discussions on some of the bigger kind of topics in your life. So maybe you're talking to a partner about how you're going to budget for a trip, or maybe there is going to be, a reassessment of joint resources and funds, and, you're needing somebody to kind of help you guide you through that, like an accountant or somebody who's managing something legally if you're dealing with joint assets or, insurance, inheritance matters. And Mercury will trine Pluto. So it looks like you're going to get some really good advice from somebody who can kind of help you through some of this stuff. It can be a therapist as well. And it's also trining Uranus, which is your modern day ruler. So it's going to help you come up with like creative solutions and also find ways, I think, to kind of budget or find opportunities to be able to have more fun or be able to travel. And psychological matters connecting to like children, your inner child, dating or intimacy can definitely surface during this eclipse. The challenge is that, it's not all positive. And I think with the sun and the moon in opposition to Saturn, you're going to be feeling like, well, I've been the person kind of financially, responsible for carrying the team, whether that's feeling the burden of just more added expenses and feeling like there has been less, financial growth with Saturn in your 2nd, lack of self-esteem, and how that can be creating some intimacy issues. And also, I think this is about like lack of emotional or psychological or intimacy, like support, financial support, where other people aren't necessarily paying their weight. So if you've been waiting for a tax situation to resolve, or if you've been waiting for a bonus or an inheritance, or maybe you've been waiting for somebody to be like, hey, let me help, that can come through this particular eclipse in the 8th house. And the 8th house is also where money comes to be due. So paying off debt, loans, and other things are definitely a theme here, but it looks like you'll get creative with figuring out how to do that. Intuitively, I look at this and I'm like, some Aquarius and Aquarius risings might be like starting like a savings account, or they're learning about investing. Maybe it's going to mean that you're starting to think about some of your long-term goals and you're like, okay, I want to travel. How do I travel more? And you're finding like, fun ways to use some of your credit card rewards or points to be able to travel. Or maybe you're starting like a college fund for one of your kids, right? That can happen. Anyway, the challenging is it's going to both oppose Saturn in your 2nd house, where I think a lot of you guys are having to build on your self-esteem and also say, I don't have to do it by myself, and it doesn't have to be all at once. It can be over time that you can, reach some of these financial goals. And it's also going to be featuring Mars coming into into Scorpio pretty soon. It's in Libra, but it's coming into a square with Pluto in your sign. So this pressure to, I got to go to school, I got to travel, I got to go somewhere. And like, I have a really good friend that's in Aquarius rising, and she was like telling me about how she was like, yeah, I was thinking about going back to school, and then talked about it with my employer, and like, they're going to pay for the whole thing. And like, that's such a, amazing kind of example of how actually, if you want to go somewhere or if you want to learn something, something can be provided to you over the next year. And it's just a matter of you asking with Saturn in the 2nd house and being like, not always the person who's like, I'll pay for it, I'll take care of it, right? Mars square Pluto is a different issue. The pressure of maybe going to school or traveling, or the incoming kind of work pressure to change and transform is definitely going to be a huge theme here. So I would definitely watch for that, and watch for some of the power dynamics. There can be inheritance or therapy breakthroughs. Look for opportunities to transform, your intimacy with partners and other people, and explore new philosophies to kind of help heal some of your biggest fears. Good luck, Aquarius. And we've got Pisces and Pisces risings. You guys are going to be experiencing a solar eclipse in Virgo. So if you happen to have any Pisces placement, I would say 27, 28, 29 degrees, you're really feeling this because it will be opposing you. But I think all the Pisces are going to feel it because of the opposition to Saturn that's in your sign. And obviously Neptune is one of your rulers as well, and it's opposing Neptune, and it's sextiling Jupiter, which is your traditional ruler. So you want to lean into what's going on with the 7th and the 5th house to kind of ease some of the things that are going on with the oppositions between the 1st and the 7th. Now, to break that all down, the solar eclipse is taking place in your 7th house. So there's definitely some action going on with other people. And sometimes when you have eclipses in the 7th house, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with other people. So friends, clients, coworkers, partners, they could be going through some radical kind of changes. And in Virgo, they're going through crisis. They're going through health stuff, right? They're going through healing issues. They are focusing on maybe, changes with their work or with their habits. But the 7th house could be your partners. It could be marriage, one-on-one, close relationships, clients, work relationships too, Virgo. And at the time of the eclipse, the ruler is Mercury, and Mercury sits in the 8th house. So this basically means that, there is going to be new relationships or commitments that will be coming in as a result of the solar eclipse in Virgo. Some of them you don't see yet. It can be about releasing codependency in relationships. Mercury in the 8th does deepen talks, especially when it comes to intimacy and vulnerability, but I think it's also going to be about shared resources. So a lot of like Pisces and Pisces risings are going to be like, okay, well, how do we navigate, dealing with taxes or paying for insurance, or, if you have changes in your finances. There could also be settlement negotiations, child support, spousal support stuff that can be coming up. Particularly with Mercury at a 5, some of you guys are going to be focused on child expenses or child support, or it's going to be about fertility matters and making changes with, emotionally, I think just vulnerability when it comes to like merging with another person. Obviously, the eclipse features Mercury trine Pluto, so it's very emotional for you guys, and like a lot of the conversations and the information that's coming up is going to be about, joint finances, psychological change, and also home change. But this also features the eclipse in opposition to Saturn in your sign. And my interpretation of this is like where Sun, Pisces, and Pisces risings through Saturn and Neptune retrograde back into your sign the next couple of months are like, on one hand, where are certain relationships not cutting it and it's not good enough? Where I've been in a relationship and it hasn't been working and things have been kind of breaking down and like they're not seeing kind of their undoing patterns, and like you will eventually get to where you're done if it's not in alignment over the next 6 months, and you will kind of create new boundaries, Saturn and Neptune, or you will start to kind of be a little bit more distant or evasive from certain partnerships. While others are going to go, why can't I find anybody? Saturn and Neptune back in Pisces, where are they? Why can't I find them? And it can represent that you're having to really take this time to kind of integrate the Saturn lessons and really focusing on your goals, and maybe you're prioritizing yourself. And it's not that you can't be in a relationship at this time, it's just you're more focused on yourself rather than what's going on in a relationship. And obviously, you just had a lunar eclipse in your sign. So I've seen a lot of Pisces risings that are like, I'm pregnant. And so now this is going to be like you going through that, being like, okay, I need support from a partner. The other interpretation that I have, I think, is the fact that this does sextile Jupiter in your 5th house, which does say there's opportunity for new relationship connections. It could be karmic. There could be major turning points over the next 6 months where you can meet prominent people. Venus in the 7th house is also good for meeting others. I just have a feeling that you guys are going to be meeting people that are at a distance, or you might not be on the same page about what you and another person are looking for in a relationship. Somebody might be too critical in particular about timing and commitment, and you might be more kind of in the flow with being like, yeah, whatever happens, happens. And, I'm just wanting to make sure it's a good connection, and you find that you're meeting people that are overthinking it. So you will see major evolutions, happening in relationships. And I think there can be contracts, there could be more clients coming in if you have a client-based business. Just watch for imbalances. I feel like there can be some people who are, going through something and acting very needy, and you have to be better with being like, no, like this is the boundary, don't cross it. And you might find that people come in that are very interested in you, and you're kind of like, what's the catch? Like, what do you want? Like, and Saturn and Neptune in your sign is not very, very trusting, or you're going to want your space or your alone time, and you're going to want to kind of have certain relationships at like a healthy distance. I think the key here is just to be open for stronger alliances. And, you would not be having 2 new moons in this part of your chart unless the universe wanted you to kind of have support. And some people from the past can come back, or you can be feeling like, you're on your like final act in certain relationships if things don't change. But going deeper in conversations about changes with intimacy, resources, and the home, I think is really pivotal for how you're going to be navigating relationships moving forward. So communicate vulnerabilities, I think, to kind of form deeper bonds. And this is definitely going to show you within about 6 months, as you get to, March of next year, when you have that full moon, Mercury will retrograde in your sign. So it's going to feel very similar to like March of this year, where I've had a lot of clients that were going through relationship issues when that lunar eclipse happened in Virgo. You're going to have another lunar eclipse and a Mercury retrograde in Pisces. So you will literally find yourself in a very similar situation as last spring. So you have to really think and be very particular, keep a lookout for those red flags. Don't be too critical or too picky, but also, have healthy boundaries with other people so you're getting more what it is that you want, right? Hopefully that's helpful, Pisces. Let me know how that lands for you guys. All right, well, with that being said, that is the solar eclipse in Virgo. It is a stinker of an eclipse, obviously September 21st, 2025, but we're going to be feeling it really anytime between now and the next couple of months. Remember that these eclipses are portals for change, so it's all about embracing the releases and starting with an open heart. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and if this resonated with you, give me a thumbs up and like this video. Consider sharing on your socials or follow me on X at BTBAstro. Consider sharing your thoughts below in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel for more so you can see more about the transits as they're happening in real time. Until next time, enjoy this eclipse season. I'll catch you guys back here on Thursday. Take care.